Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is a man who needs no introduction. He's our founder and fearless leader, Brody Fawcett, fresh out of the ocean.
Did you practice that?
I didn't practice it, but I wrote it down.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not really the guest. I feel like we're both guests today. So, because we're going to jam and do our first ever Q&A episode right here. So you're going to answer some of these questions too. So it's not just me as the guest.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. You brought this up the other day, like, dude, we should just do like a live or Q&A, just kind of be able to like talk about what's going on as opposed to like the typical interview type podcast. And I think that's a great idea. I'm excited for it. People have been submitting questions. We've got people on live as well on Instagram that are submitting questions. And so I'm excited to just kind of interact with everybody and you know, hopefully add some value. So it should be fun.
Let's do it, man. Let's dive into it.
All right. Well, we'll just start with, we'll just dive into the first question here that people have submitted. So these ones are kind of hard without a ton of prep on some of these, but Kip the CPA said, what are your top 5 daily non-negotiables? Maybe at least I can think of 1 or 2. I don't know if I have 5 daily. Do you have 5? How many daily non-negotiables do you have? That's a big one.
Yeah, I like how he framed it like non-negotiables, just because it's like there's a lot of things that I feel like people do every single day that are important, but it's like, do you really define them as non-negotiables where you do not miss them? So maybe we could go like, you say 1, I say 1, you say 1, I say 1.
Yeah.
And it's a good time now for this too, because it's the beginning of a new year still. Yeah. So like the commitments are still hopefully going strong. I mean, I feel like this is super cliche, but just waking up early. And I think early could be different for anybody, right? It's all about you, but there's just so much good that happens early in the morning. You get ahead, you get some momentum early on. Like I know so many people, they're like, I like to sleep in, I like to stay up late. It's just, you're not as productive staying up late as you are waking up earlier in the morning, even if you get the same amount of hours of sleep. So that for me is like one thing I'm been doing this year is waking up the same time every single day. So even Sundays and Saturdays, a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm going to sleep in. It's the weekend, especially Sundays. But what I've been doing is just forcing myself to get up at the same time and get like my planning in on Sundays when everybody else is asleep and it's quiet. And so, anyhow, just protecting those early morning hours. It's so important. Like I've got workout in already this morning. I guess it's not as early over where most people are. But like I got like an hour and a half of surfing in, and like now my day is starting and it just feels so good, right? Got some reading in, got some like personal study, woke up, prayed. Okay, maybe I'm getting into like some of these things that that are not supposed to be getting into yet, but waking up early, whatever early is for you, like I would say like before the sun gets up for sure. Like you need that.
I like that. Dude, and I need to make that. I like that. That's one of your non-negotiables because I do that, but it's definitely not a non-negotiable. I should make it more consistent. And like you said, the big thing, I started doing that too with the weekends thing is not sleeping in on weekends because then you just like you're jet lagged, your rhythm's off for the rest of the week. So I love that. Honestly, man, I don't have a ton of non-negotiables right now. I have a lot of stuff that are a daily, you know what I mean? I have like, oh, I'm going to fit it into the week somewhere or into the month somewhere. But one thing I did is started doing yoga every day. That's a non-negotiable. I'm going to do it every day throughout the year because I'm getting old, man. I'm turning 38 this year. And I'm like, if I don't take care of my body, like I can feel it now, which is embarrassing. But yoga saves the soul, man. Keeps you young.
Dang, dude, you are getting old. That's crazy.
I think
when we first met, I thought you were old and you're the same age as I am now.
Exactly. You're getting old. But yeah, I don't know if I have a ton of non-negotiables. I have a ton of daily things.
I mean, even if they're not, what are the daily things? Even if it's not like in your mind non-negotiable, but what do you feel like leads to a successful day?
Dude, so a couple of things. I have like a daily, like, what do you call it? I'm on my notes reminder on my phone. I have like, okay, these are my dailies. I'll just read you my dailies.
Yeah.
Brush teeth, yoga, say my morning mantras, add to my gratitude list, read over my 2023 resolutions, morning water intake. I do a brain workout with like a Peak app or Headway app. I get morning sunlight and fresh air, make sure I study, get outside, meditate, and journal. So those are my dailies, but they're not always non-negotiables because I make it a little soft on myself that if I miss them, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But the yoga is a non-negotiable. So that's where I'm at right now. But it changes
Yeah.
throughout the year. So
That's awesome, dude. Anything else to add to the list? Like I would say, I mean, the thing with non-negotiables, the thing with like routines and habits is morning time. I feel like if you don't get it in, it's really hard later in the day. Like you just become, it's almost like the beginning of the week is easier to be motivated than it is towards the end of the week. And so like, that's why I always, all my hard stuff or all the things I don't look forward to, I schedule it for Mondays. Like Mondays are jam packed. Like I'd rather have a busy Monday. And that's my other thing is like, I take Fridays off usually. And so it's like a family day. And then it's nice because I feel like most people kind of slow down towards Friday anyways. So I don't feel like I'm missing much.
Yeah.
And then I take Wednesdays. They're like personal days. I know today's a Wednesday. We scheduled this podcast, but like I have a massage today. That's why I went surfing. Like I try not to schedule anything unless it like fills my cup. This is something that obviously fills my cup, but yeah, I think like early on in the morning, in the day, like any like reading personal development stuff, I feel like I'm always listening to a podcast at least a day. Always reading some sort of a book, personal development book usually, or a business book or a real estate book. Just kind of like getting those doses. I feel like the more too, you're not, I don't know everyone's work situation, but the more you're kind of on an island, like I am on an island, physically, and like all of our stuff's digital, right? Which is amazing because there's a lot of freedom. But then the flip side to that is like you have to put yourself in situations where you're surrounding yourself with the right people, and sometimes that's really hard because you want to be able to level up and do all these things, and you need to consume the right content in order to continue to grow. And for me, like you got to do that daily.
I love that. And when there's this term called a precrastinator, we all know what a procrastinator is, someone who puts everything off. And like you're saying, dude, be a precrastinator. Get it done as soon as you can in the day, as soon as you can in the week, as soon as you can in the month. Because not only will you probably be more likely to get it done, two, you're probably going to do it with better quality. Like when I was doing 75 hard, which is like a whole list of non-negotiables, and people are pretty familiar with it. Man, when you're waiting until like midnight or something, it's a crappy workout. It's a crappy read. It's bad journaling. But when you do it first thing in the morning, you're going to get a higher quality of it as well as be more likely to get it done. So, all right, there you go,
water,
Kip.
especially with the gallon. There's no way you can drink a gallon of water if you put it off until the end of the day. It just doesn't happen. You're up late and you don't sleep good because you got to pee all the time and got to get in early.
I had a couple days like that. You learn really quickly that you're like, okay, it's not worth it. I'm going to do this better.
Yeah.
Or else it's miserable. All right, next question. We got Memo Fructos said, what word of advice would you tell your younger selves? So the first question the first thing that came to my mind quickly is buy more assets, collect more assets, build your personal portfolio. That would be the advice I would give my younger self. Don't dabble in it. Go hard with it. That's your number one fiscal responsibility, is to collect assets. What about you, Brody? What would you tell young Brody?
I got like multiple things, but what's been on my mind a lot lately is just like, especially younger generation, like, I don't know, I sound like an old person saying this, but just like the quality of like learning how to work, I think that it's easy to talk about trading, time for money. You shouldn't trade time for money, and you got to get yourself in a situation where you're not trading time for money. And that's what we talk about a lot now. And that's like really fulfilling now. But I feel like you can't jump to that too soon. If that's all you're focused on, you miss out on early on. You need to trade money for time, and as much time as you can, trade that for money. And so it teaches so many things. So I would say like, just work so hard, like work super hard. negate that. And then also, can I do 3 things?
Yeah.
Is that allowed?
It just says words of advice, so you can tell young Brody anything you want.
I would say be confident. Like confidence is, man, I knew if I had more confidence at an earlier age, I would have been a better athlete. I would have been a better student. I would have landed more girls in middle school, high school, right? Whatever. I probably would have had more friends, and nothing needed to change with my abilities whatsoever, except for like mentally being confident and like owning those things and not as much worried about what people thought about what you're wearing or anything. Like just be confident. Like girls are attracted to that, people are attracted to that, people want to follow someone, a leader who's confident. So yeah, I feel like confidence is huge, huge, huge. And then the last thing I would just say is like focus on like learning a skill, man. Like look at who's doing what you want to do, whether that's like an entrepreneur, whether that's, I feel like at an early age, I was so driven, but I didn't have any direction. And so like that drive without direction, I kind of felt like lost at a lot of times. And so seek out somebody who's living the life that you look and you say, hey, yeah, when I get a wife, when I get married, when I have more kids, or even if you're in that stage now and you're like 10 years from now, where do I want to be? Where do I want to end up? What do I want my lifestyle, my daily routines to look like? Like what kind of shape do I want to be? All of those things. And then go learn from those people. Don't just like be scared to ask questions and be nervous about it and say, I hope my life will turn out like that. Like go interview them, like ask to interview them, or go read their books or go study their stuff, because that's the only way you're going to really learn, to be honest, how to be that person. And you can save yourself so many years by just going directly to the source and having, like, you decide who your mentors are. Your mentors don't decide who their mentees are. Like that's a decision you get to make. And so that would be my 3 pieces of advice there.
I love that. That's good advice. I love that. Hopefully that helps you there, Memo Frutos. All right. Do you have any live questions that have popped up we should address, Brody, or should I just keep doing the ones that have already submitted? Anybody chiming in live?
There's a few, but I think they're ones that are on this list. So
cool.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys are watching live. If you have a question, real estate related or other, post it on there. But yeah, dude, I think that.
All right. Sweet. So the next one we got is from Trayson Farnsworth. And he says, if you were to build your first rental property again, what would it be? Fourplex or what? So I'm going to adjust that to say build or buy. Yeah, if you were to get your first rental property, what would it be? Fourplex or what? Yeah, I guess my thought on that is just, I don't think it really matters, dude. And for me, it was just like, I knew I had to buy something because I wanted to do real estate, even though I knew nothing about it. I'm like, I just have to buy something. So I literally just found something down the street from where I was living and bought it. And I think just taking the action is the most important, as opposed to if it was a duplex, fourplex, this or that. Looking back, yeah, might as well just go get an FHA loan and put 5% down on a fourplex and have 4 doors, because then you have a more valuable asset that's going to go up in more value and increase. Probably just do FHA loan on a fourplex with the littlest money down is probably the play for your first.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, as long as you can find one, and as long as like don't solidify it so much in a box of like, yeah, it's got to be a fourplex, that you go and overpay for something and it defeats the whole purpose of getting a fourplex, right?
Yeah.
And this is something we talk a lot about, but I love this analogy of like a puzzle. And like, there's so many different pieces to the puzzle. And if you want to know what the picture is that the puzzle makes, you can't just take one piece of the puzzle and go off of all that information and say, this is what the picture is. And sometimes you can't even take 2 or 3 or 4, right? You got to have majority of the puzzle pieces to know and be confident, like, oh yeah, this is a puzzle of a horse or whatever. And so I think just like saying like, yeah, buying a fourplex as your first property, it's kind of like one puzzle piece, right? Yeah. And so it's like, don't forget, like, getting the fourplex at a good price, the financing on the fourplex. And this is why, if people don't know, like, why we talk so much about buying a fourplex or under, is because anything 5 units or more is considered commercial and it's different financing. And so 4 units and less, you can owner occupy for a lower down payment, which allows you to leverage your money better. And so if you're getting a loan, but you're buying the fourplex and you're buying it at the right price even, but the loan you get doesn't match up and the financing, you have to put more down and it doesn't pencil that way.
Yeah.
It's like that's a whole nother piece of the puzzle, right? So like there's 3 distinct pieces, and if you only focus on one of them, and that's why anyhow it's so many people they get hyper focused on, hey, this is the cash flow, like it's a good deal. Well, it's the cash flow based on what, right? It's cash flow based on yeah, exactly, how much cash are you in, or so many other factors. So yeah, not to take that the wrong way. So it could be a fourplex, but like I also could be a triplex. It could be a duplex. It could be my first house was just a single family house, but there's 6 bedrooms. And so when I could rent it out by the room, it penciled better than probably buying like a fourplex, right? I could cash flow way more. I could get into it, less money, all of these things. And so in my mind, it was kind of like a multifamily in a way, because I could fit more people in there than I could with a fourplex. And does the fourplex have 1 unit and all of the, you know what I'm saying? Like there's only 1 bedroom, so it's 4 bedrooms and you can get the same amount of rent as if you had a duplex and there was 4 bedrooms on each side. Now you have 8 rooms that you could rent out, or you can charge more. So anyhow, what is it? A class, C class, right? Like all that makes a difference. Is it falling over? So obviously I'm like taking this and like going the complete, I just want to drive home that point. We'll say that. I think I like botched the whole question, but that's been on my mind a lot. And so many people get so hyper focused on like this certain asset class. And it's just more about the numbers and the freedom that comes from it and how you can leverage your money and the return that you're getting than it is about a fourplex.
Yeah. And I would just say this, and this might be kind of sound like counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I would say go buy the nicest thing you can qualify to get with the criteria that it'll cash flow and be self-sufficient with a good healthy margin, that if you did need to lower rents or whatever, it's still cash flowing. But as opposed to a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go buy the cheapest thing I can get and just start easy. But I'm like, no, go buy the most expensive thing you can qualify for if you're using debt, if it's still self-sustaining, if it still cash flows and can cover it. Because if you go buy a cheap little $50,000 thing and you use up your 5% down primary residence or 3.5% down on something very cheap, it's like you should have got something bigger, because then you own more asset. You actually control it. Even though 95% of it is debt, you're actually the one on the deed. You own that, even though the bank is letting you money for it. So you'd rather own a bigger, nicer asset than a cheaper, smaller one, because when it goes up by 3 or 10 or 20%, $1 million property going up by 20% is a lot bigger deal than a $50,000 property going up by 20%. And so, like say, all those caveats that you listed, there's a whole big picture, but get the nicest thing you can that's still going to cover its own costs.
Yeah, that's like higher level stuff right there. That's really good. Yeah. A lot of people don't think about that, don't look at it that way. But you that's how wealthy become more wealthy, to be honest, is that right there. When things get good and you have that, and you also have to be aware, like when things are bad, like do you have a backup plan? And your expenses are more, but if you've done your homework on it, it's not a big deal, right? Because it's covered that way.
Exactly.
But I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that recently, like the more expensive properties because at first it was like, I don't know, I feel like when I was getting into investing, it was like $300,000 was a lot of money, right? And a lot's changed since then, but it was like, anything like under 200 grand, like that's what I'm looking for. And now like recently having bought some properties that, even some like close to $2 million, and then seeing what's happened. And when those go up by 25%, it's a lot of money,
Well, and it's like, and people should continually do this, not just with the first one, is like, get what you can qualify for. If you're leveraging debt, like leverage as much as you can, because guess what? there might come a time where you can't leverage that much. You don't qualify for it. Especially a lot of people are like, oh, I want to retire from my active income. I want to pivot and be a full-time real estate investor. It's like, dude, you're not going to qualify for the kind of debt that you can when you've got an awesome income, right? Go get the $1 million, $2 million then, on because once you quit your job and you're writing everything off and your taxes show that you're not making any money, you're not going to qualify for those. So get it while you can.
Yeah, I agree, dude.
All right. Well, sweet. Next question. We got CEO Brady. I like this question. This one's a good one because we've got a lot of entrepreneurs that follow. And they said the question was 1099 and qualifying for loans. So some people think like, oh, it's an issue if you're 1099 to qualify for loans. But I've got a whole bunch of thoughts on that. But I'll turn it over to you first, Brody.
Okay. So I love this because I went through this whole thing, right? And I worked with a lot of people in the same boat, and immediately, because you need 2 years of, right, tax filing 1099 history and they'll take the average of the last 2 years to qualify for most loans. And so a lot of people automatically, when they get started, are like, hey, I've only worked this job a year, or I've worked 2 years, but I'm finally able to file my taxes this year, or I wrote off too much money. That's another big one, because everyone told me write everything off so you don't have to pay taxes, and it ends up hurting people. And so first thing I would say is don't get sucked into the mindset of, oh, I only have 1 year of history and like I need to file taxes, so I need to wait a whole another year before I can buy real estate. That's the first mistake. And then the second thing I would say is there are so many options. There's so many ways to go buy real estate without having to get a traditional loan. Okay. Yeah. And we'll dive into so many of them, especially inside real estate investing school with seller financing and just so many subject to, like, there's so many options. Okay. And then the last thing, which I've been dying to talk about this at some point, is like there's something called a DSCR loan.
Yes.
And we're not lenders or anything like that, but it stands for debt service coverage ratio. And all that means is they're loaning you money, not based on your tax returns, but based on the performance of the property, right? Is the debt covered on the property? Meaning, can you prove that the rents cover the mortgage? And if so, they'll loan you money on it. They actually, in fact, don't want to see any of your tax returns. Now they'll run your credit and make sure like you have, money in the bank and whatever, but like they don't want to know how much money you made. And so that's like a really cool option. There's options that with Airbnbs as well, where they'll do like it's almost like an appraisal, but instead of appraising the value of the property, they'll look at the rents and the potential rents. What are things going for? In other areas, if you have leases in place, that's even better. A lot of times they'll go off of the lease that you have, or they'll take they'll go off market rent, or they'll take like 90% of what it could be, and they'll give you that as the value. So long story short, it's like a huge opportunity, and you have to put a little bit more down. It's usually 20-25% more, but same thing.
The terms aren't as good.
Yeah. It's usually a percent higher on the interest rate. So, but once again, it's like that's all just a piece of the puzzle. If it makes sense, it makes sense. And a lot of times it's going to get you into a deal a year sooner, and it's a good cash flowing deal, then like, what are you waiting for? Who cares that interest rate's higher, right?
Yeah, dude, amen. Because that's the thing is there's the conventional loans, which like people are used to when they go buy a house and they have to give all their documents and all their history and all that stuff. And then there's all these other commercial loans, like you said. And it's like the whole 2 years of 1099 to qualify, that only applies to conventional standard loans. As soon as you go into commercial investment loans or DSCR loans, then it's about the asset. And so that goes funny if we go back to Trace and Farnsworth's question, like, what should your first rental property be? Well, here's the thing. If you've only got 1 year of 1099, you don't qualify for any of the traditional loans, then go buy a fiveplex. Like you're saying, as soon as you get into 5 units or more, it's going to be a commercial loan anyway. They're not going to look at your income. They're looking at the asset. So it's like maybe your first deal is a 12 unit. Because it isn't dependent on your income and you don't qualify yet. And then your second deal is the nice little FHA, you qualify, blah, 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 because now you've had 2 or 3 years. So it's like, just go find ways to make it work. And going back to your like, tell yourself to be more confident, the younger you, it's like, believe there's a way that it will work, even if you don't know how. Don't sit there and go, oh, I can't do it. Like, there's a way to get it done. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to start moving forward until I figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah. I think the hardest part with that is like we get people that are telling us, no, it can't be done. No, it can't be done. And we take
Like
their answer.
qualified lenders, like you call 3 institutions, they say, oh, no, you can't do that. And you go, oh, well, who am I to think I can do it?
Yep.
And turns out they just can't do it. So they tell you can't,
Yeah. Yeah. Or there's always a way. And that's if you have the attitude or the mentality of when someone says no and you're just like, okay, but how, right? Like, no, but how? No, but how? And I love this concept of, it goes with anything of someone saying like, no, you can't do something. It's like, well, what if I could? What would it look like? And that goes for like just mentality as well in your mindset. You want to go achieve something. You have these big goals. You want to buy the $1 million house, whatever. Okay, I can't do that. That's your initial thought or someone telling you that. And you say, well, what would it look like if I could do that? It's like, well, if you could do that, you'd have to show this much on your taxes, or you'd have to get someone to co-sign for you, or you'd have to come up with this much money. So now you have like a conditional statement. And like I said, it goes for achieving things in life, but then you have something to work off of. Then you can work backwards. Cool. So all I need to do is make this much money and I can qualify. That's one option. Sweet. All I need to do is find someone to co-sign. I can do this. Cool. All I need to do is get a little creative on how I go structure this. Like I can go figure that out. I can go put that together. And so there's just so much power in working backwards when you say, okay, but what if I could do this? What would it look like?
Love that.
Hypothetically, right? And then you go figure that out.
Dude, I love that. And if I had used that earlier in my career, like even with like lenders, because that was a big thing. I'd call lenders like, hey, can I do this? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, I can't do it. But if I had said, well, what would it look like for me to be able to do this? Then they probably would have told me like, oh, well, you could go get this kind of loan. I can't do them because all I do is conventional. But if you did X, Y, Z, and no one's trying to keep a secret. There's just like I said, a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Yeah. And maybe you had some qualifying thing like, can I buy this way? And like, no, you can't buy it that way. Yeah. But you could buy it this way. Yes. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's super insightful.
Dude, and so much of that comes from asking questions and the like, why not? Why not? Why not? Right. Mm-hmm. And like, what if? What would it look like? But it's so funny because I feel like just like anything, you can, the more you learn about real estate, it's like, oh, I could be an incredible real estate agent, or like I could be an incredible lender. I feel like I could go crush the lending space because you understand so many things that majority of the lenders don't, and so it's like, and it's just like, okay, well, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this. So which one you want? Which one's easier? Maybe that's not ideal, but it's definitely an option.
So. Yeah, you got to be, creativity goes a long way, man. I remember when I was first getting into the sales game, like a decade plus ago, and I was writing down like, what are the top qualities it takes to succeed? And one of them was creativity. It was like, you just got to find a way to make it happen, even though it's never crossed a sales training book. It was never taught in the meeting. Like, you just got to get creative, and that applies to anything. And part of being creative is just like troubleshooting. Like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? It's not like you had the right creative idea off the top of your head. It's like you threw out 25 ideas and one stuck, and that was, I guess that's not that creative.
No, it's like you can take that, and then you can take that and roll that into your next deal. And, if something didn't work and it's like, it goes to the back of your head and you're like, okay, I know that didn't work in this scenario, but like you learn so much and you just become more and more versatile in any situation, right? It's like the whole tool belt analogy. The more tools you can just like stuff in your tool belt, eventually there's going to come a project that most people don't have the right tool to go and solve, but you're like, oh yeah, I have this tool back here that's going to work perfect for this type of project. So I'm able to get it done when most people can't. And if you never stuff your tool belt by like learning all of these different tools or strategies or whatever, then all of a sudden you start looking at everything like, oh, that can't be done. I can't do that. I don't have the things necessary. And so, I think it goes hand on hand with a question someone asked on here live. Can I ask you it? Because I'm curious.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So this was Lindsay. Sorry, I'm trying to talk in the mic and look at the same time.
You're good.
Lindsay J. Morris, okay? And she's just starting out, and so she wants to know, what advice would you give someone just starting out? Because there's so many directions to go. Um, it's overwhelming and exciting all at the same time. So I know we kind of answered that a little bit with like the fourplex question. We dove into it, but like with everything we're talking about, I wanted to ask you specifically because she has a good question. It is like
There is so much.
overwhelming and there is so much. And it's like, how do I even figure
Dude,
this out?
if I were to break it down super simple, I would literally just go, okay, how much money do you have? Assuming you have some money, just go find something that you can buy that'll cover its own costs with that much money. That's as close to home as possible. Let that just be the most basic, easiest, simplest, like, because there's just so much information out there. Just start with that. If you can buy something down the road that you can rent it out for enough to cover the costs, it's mortgage and insurance and taxes and whatever, then just buy that. Just start there. Don't overcomplicate it. And again,
Yeah.
that the answer to that could be 1,000 different answers. You know what I mean? And that's just one. And the trick is just whichever one you hear, whichever one sticks or you like, then just get laser focused and ignore all the others. Whichever answer you like, just ignore the others and then just get laser focused, put on your blinders and just go accomplish that very number one, that whichever one you decided you liked.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good answer and a good question, just because today, like, there's so many ads out there. You scroll through Instagram or Facebook and it's like someone's talking about how this is the only way to make money. You have to do short-term rentals. Like you have to do Airbnb arbitrage. You have to do subject to like this. You have to go wholesale. It's the only way to make good money, or flip
Whatever
houses.
I'm selling, you have to do.
Whatever I'm selling, it's the only way to make money.
Yeah.
And people, and you'll see it a lot, even like some students in real estate investing school, like, yeah, I came from this program or that program. And a lot of times you get in the habit of like jumping ship, right? As soon as something's not working, it's like, okay, jump ship, or this sounds good. It's that shiny object syndrome. The grass is always greener, instead of just buckling down and diving into it, right? So I think that my only thing that I would say here is, I don't think this is the case with you, Lindsay, but a lot of people, what they do is they think that they're working hard at learning real estate and diving in, and they're really not. They're just like, oh, it'd be cool to get into real estate one day, and they see a bunch of stuff all over the place and they're like, oh, it's kind of confusing, it's difficult, it's scary. And the only thing like fear is lack of knowledge, if you think about it. I can't remember who said it, but they're like, faith and fear are the exact same thing. They're both made up, right? Fear, you're just worried about what could go wrong, and faith, you have that hope for what could go right, right? And so you get to choose which one you want. But like education, man, like this, it's so free, it's out there, even if it's not amazing. The coolest thing about it is you can go get so much of it, and you might have to sift through a lot of it, but man, you're going to learn so much. And eventually, because you have the knowledge, the fear starts to go away, and it's a lot easier to know what you're doing and execute.
I love that. It's like, you don't need the faith or the fear. You just need information. like shelve both of those and just go get the knowledge. And then you don't have to worry about all those, because those are like emotions, you know what I mean? And there's a place for each of them. Fear keeps you alive and faith can get you moving when you can't see. Like there's a place for them, but it's a even more powerful place when you can just shelve both of them and just use.
Dude, like a good analogy is, so it's been storming really bad here in Maui. It's the most rain they've had in 10 years, they said.
Oh, welcome to the island.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I feel bad anyone that's been here last week vacationing, but so the water is like really brown and murky, and that's obviously when sharks are out, right? Because it's just like a lot of people, they won't even touch the water, and it's smart, you shouldn't, right? But then it's like, okay, it's kind of clearing up, like when's a good time to, now you can go surf or go swim again, versus okay, no, there's still sharks out there. And so you have this whole like faith and fear thing in a way, right? And so, but like at the end of the day, it's so true. Education is like, okay, well, what should I be educated? I'm not going to take someone's word for it that says, hey, yeah, don't go out surfing for the next month until everything's perfectly clear, versus someone else that's like, no, it's going to clear up by tomorrow. Even though it's a little murky, you're going to be okay. But like, point is, you educate yourself, you get as much information as you can, right? Without over educating and never acting. But eventually, right, there comes a point where like, okay, I've gathered the information. I feel good about making a decision, whether that's like staying home for another week and not surfing, or whether that's going out there and taking the quote unquote risk that there might be sharks out there. Right. So
Yeah.
different analogy, but it's the same exact thing. Get educated and then make a decision. That's okay if the decision is now's not the right time, but at least you educate yourself first.
And I was just doing a podcast with a guy the other day we're going to release shortly, but we talked about that you don't wait till you're 100% educated. Like 70 to 80% is fine.
Yes.
Like when you get 70 to 80% of the info, it's time to act.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are waiting for the 90 to 100. They're like, oh, I don't need 100, but they still want 90. It's like, no, dude, 70 to 80% of the information is plenty. Now you got to act. That's the only way you're going to learn the extra 30 to 20% anyway, is through action. And in real estate, so forgiving, you can back out almost every step along the way if you learn something big along the way. But yeah, don't get all the information, get 70 to 80% and then act. I wanted to hit one more thing back on the 1099 and qualifying for loans question though, because a lot of people, this is my advice. Everybody, okay, listen up, okay? This is an action item. Everybody listening needs to go do this. Whether you are 1099 or not, go open an LLC today if you have not got one. Go open one, because then you can start using that LLC, okay? And what'll happen is, let's say you've got 1 year of 1099, and now you've got 2 years, and a few years have passed, but you switch jobs, okay? Then that whole 1099 thing is going to restart. You sold for this company for 3 years, and now you move to this new company. Lenders are going to look at that and they're like, ooh, well, I'm nervous about you just started this new job. But you don't show that. You don't say, hey, I work for ABC company and now XYZ company. You show that you work for your LLC for the past 10 years. Even though you might have worked for 5 different companies during that 10 years, the lender sees this overarching thing that you work for, we'll call it, Brody Fawcett LLC. Oh, you've been at Brody Fawcett LLC for 10 years? Little does he know that you were acting as this for 5 years, this for 2 years. And so it gives you this consistent work history that'll be really cool. And when you open like a business account with your LLC, once you've had it open and it's been established for multiple years, you get extra benefits like ACH withdrawals and things like that you couldn't do if you had a brand new LLC. So go open an LLC, even if you have no use for it, you don't know you want it, you have a W-2, just get it going and it'll give you options down the road when you need them. Don't wait to do it until you need it, because you'll want some established history. So just a little trick.
Yeah, it's a great plug. We could do seriously a whole episode on that stuff. I think too, since we're talking about random Q&A stuff, another cool thing with that is if you guys have vehicle payments and they're like for your LLC or your business, right? You could easily have, hey, my vehicle is for my real estate investing business that you open up an LLC for, whatever, right? If you make payments out of that LLC for 12 months, and the vehicle's owner of the title is the LLC, then it goes away from your debt to income ratio. So as long as it's been a year, like now your next property, let's say you have a $500 or $1,000 vehicle payment, being made 12 months from that business account, they will not count that against you qualifying for the next property. So really cool there. And there's just so many other things too. Like I've talked about it a lot before, but like I've gotten a handful of loans on properties from my LLC. Like they didn't run my personal credit, that doesn't show up on my personal debt to income, all of those things, because I had established credit in the LLC. It was a commercial loan, right? So my business bought the property. So there's so many things you can do long term and establish that credit. And we had Sarah on with real estate investing school just to come jam with the students on midterm rentals. And something that she talked about, she wrote the book. I don't know the actual title of it. What is it? Short term or I don't know, using the MTR strategy, mastering the 30-day stay. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Mastering the 30-day stay. She's awesome. But one of the things that she talked about is every time she buys a property, she obviously opens up the LLC, puts the property in that LLC, but then goes and opens up a credit card under that LLC, and she does any renovations with that that credit card and pays it off. And obviously she like has hacked the credit card system and has all of her flights paid for and hotels and whatever. And she's a nomad, so I'm sure that comes in handy. But I love that concept of like you're just building up credit under that LLC, which you can use again in the future. So
yeah, I love that. All right, Sue. Well, let's move on to see. I guess
I,
you already, Lindsay Moore.
last plug, Joe, I would say too, that's why we have real estate investing school. Like that's why we created it. It's just more of a fast track from all the YouTube videos, podcasts, books, everything. We've taken all of that and like not only consolidated it, but then we give you like a one-on-one coach and access to experts. So, yeah, I love that side of it because it takes away a lot of like the where do I start or it's scary. Now you have a mentor who's been there, done that a bunch of different times. And they're like, yeah, no, you're okay doing this. Or like, yeah, it's okay to be scared. It pencils, everything makes sense. Like pull the trigger, whatever, right? It's just so nice to have someone helping you along. And even if you already have a handful of properties, you just want to scale it, dude, like mentors in life, whether that's real estate investing school or not, is so powerful because you're not relying upon your own lack of experience to make decisions. Instead, you get guidance. So,
Amen, dude. And not only that, like you also have like friends to do it with, right? Like it's so powerful just to have somebody to like. There's somebody's been there that can guide you, but then also somebody to be like, okay, let's jump, bro. And you just held hands and jump. Like I was just talking to some of my students yesterday, and they teamed up and they're doing like some projects together. And one's like in Utah, one's in Idaho. They don't even live in the same state, but they're both just stoked to be able to like do something together on it because they're on the same level and same page. And it's like it's really cool to tackle stuff with somebody, and it eliminates a lot of the fear. I know when I decided to like start really investing in real estate, like the first deal I did was it was with a partner, and it was a cheap deal. It was just like I was a little nervous because I didn't know enough, I felt like, and but just doing it with somebody is just like, okay, it just kind of alleviate a little bit of the fear and pain. And then, and I wish I'd had a coach at that time, would have been even a lot better, but at least I had a friend. And if you have both, it's like, dude, that
and
helps
you get people that have different strengths and different weaknesses. And a lot of times, like even within real estate med school, especially, there's a handful of people that I was talking to one of the coaches the other day. Like I have some students that have $1 million in the bank, right? Like that's obviously very, very few of them, but like they're looking for deals. So then you have other people that are like, hey, I'm like scraping by, but like I'm all in on this thing, and finding deals, and I'm putting the time in. Well, the person that has, the $1 million in the bank, like that's the one they don't have as much of is time. And so they want to leverage that, and they're doing that with their money. And so you bring a situation together like that, and that's, not even just inside real estate investment school. If you can go create that in a partnership and around people like that in a community, like, dude, that's how you get ahead. I want to go buy this property, but I can't because of X. Go find somebody who's has an excess of X and plug in with them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, so we got to wrap up in a little bit, but we have a couple more questions we can get to. So Ireland or Kelly Reland, or I don't know, Kelly Reland asked, well, they just said the statement house hacking. Okay. So I'm guessing they're asking about house hacking. The thought I had, and a lot of people know, what's house hacking. You can kind of rent out a portion of your house, or maybe buy a duplex, rent out a side, or rent out the basement. It kind of helps cover the mortgage. So you're using your house that you live in as an investment property, as opposed, that's the idea of house hacking. But one thing I think of that's the most powerful part of house hacking is really primary residence loan hacking. It's not as catchy, but that's really where the power comes in. Isn't just renting out a bedroom or renting out a basement. It's primary residence house hacking, because that's where you can get the 5% down, the 3.5% down. Like it's hacking that loan to get the best investment property you can with very little out of pocket. And anyway, that's one thing I think people need to realize when we talk about house hacking. That's the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I mean, you nailed it. It goes back to like one of the bigger mistakes that I made on like the second property I ever bought. It was a duplex, so I was like, "Oh, this is rad! Like I'm house hacking this, right? My wife and I can live upstairs right out the basement." But like, you missed the most important part, and I
And then
put
you put 20% down, huh?
yeah, it wasn't even 20%. It was like an even cash number. I don't even know what it was, but it was like I have this much cash and it like legit an even number, whether it was like 20 grand or whatever. And I could have only put 5 grand down.
Yeah.
It was just something dumb like that. And I was like, okay, let's do this much. It made absolutely no sense. It wasn't a good leverage of my cash. And so, yes. And part of that's because you're like, oh, I'm house hacking. And with
Yeah.
what you said, it's like, no, you're not house hacking. You're primary loan hacking.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because I did the same thing. I put 20% down on like the first like 3 primaries that I bought, or 4. Like, no, the first one I didn't, but all the other ones, because I didn't have any money, so it was my only option, right? But
Yeah.
then once I started making money, I started putting 20% down because, oh, I can avoid PMI. Like, I'm so smart. And it's like, dude, you could have bought that for 5% and you put 20%. Why don't you take the other 15% and go buy another property? But I didn't understand that, because even if you're not going to rent out the basement, you're not going to buy a duplex, and you're not, you're just living in it alone. That's not house hacking. But if you put the 5% down and you run the numbers and go, hey, this would still rent out for the mortgage and taxes and insurance when I leave, that's a house hack, because then you go live in it for a few years and then you leave and you've only got 5% or 3.5% of your funds tied up in that thing.
Yeah.
When you've got 20 to 30% tied up and you leave, you're like, I kind of need that back. And then you end up selling your house and you regret it. When if you'd only had 3% into it, just let it roll and let someone else pay the thing off.
Dude, that could be a whole nother strategy. Come up with the name with it, because it's house hacking, I guess. Well, not really. I guess who knows the definition for house hacking? I asked Brandon. I was like, because Brandon Turner came up with that definition. I was like, hey, have you ever thought about just trademarking it? And he's like, well, the problem with trademarking is you have to enforce everybody that uses it. Like, you have to be able to prove that you're enforcing it. And he's like, how are we supposed to do that? So many people are using it all over the place, So but like, yeah, there's a whole nother strategy of buying a house. Like, for me, it was like a live-in flip. I'm like, hey, this is an upgrade in the home that I'm living in, but it needs some work. And I know that I can put some sweat equity and 50 grand into this, and then I can sell it for 200 grand more after 2 years. And there's no capital gains tax, and I can roll that over into something else if I want to, or pocket it or whatever. But it's like, either way, it's intentionally like, hey, this isn't going to be a good house hack. I'm not going to be able to rent it out long term to make money off of it, but I know how I'm buying it, and I know the work that it needs, and I know what I can do to it. So I think stuff like that, or buying a rental, right? Logically, not emotionally, or buying a home logically, as in like, this is something I'm going to hold for a really long time. Biggest mistake people make is they buy a home not based on that. And then later they're like, I want to get into real estate, and they can't rent the house out for what their expenses are on it. And so eventually they just have to sell it. And then it just prolongs the process of getting into real estate. So
yeah, dude. Okay, here, trademark. It's the power of the primary. The power of the primary. The primary residence, you don't have to pay taxes on when you sell. Like, say, up to like $500,000 or whatever. You get to the primary loans, you can put 5% or 3.5% down. It's the power of the primary. Like, that's the thing people need to consider when they're using a primary home. Don't just look at it as something to live in. There's a lot of power.
Pop, dude. It's the pop method.
Pop method.
Primary. Pop.
You heard it here first. But anyway,
use it. Cool. Joe's gonna sue you.
You better Venmo me 5 cents every time you say that.
I like it, dude. I like it. All right, next question. What we got? All
right, last one, and then we're rolling out. So the Blake Erickson just asked about seller financing. So, that's obviously a hot topic right now, and interest rates are really high. They're making it hard to get numbers to come out and cash flow. We obviously could talk a couple hours on seller financing. There's a lot of different directions to go with that. But just what's the first thing that pops in your mind when you hear seller financing?
Oh man, I had like 5 things pop in my head. Leverage is the first like word, right? Because that's That's all it is. I mean, that's all real estate is leverage. The very, very first thing that popped in my mind was you need to understand like the basics of real estate investing to understand the power of seller financing. The basics of real estate investing are how do I put the least amount of my own money into something that cash flows and produces money every single month that I can put in my pocket or do what I want with, right? How can I go get more of those and do more of that? Now, in order to go and do that, and that's very, very basic, one sentence. This is what real estate investing is and why it's powerful. You use a little bit of money to make a lot of money every single month, right? And obviously it goes deeper than that, but understanding that concept, there's certain hurdles that keep you from doing that, right? Sounds easy. Input little money, output a lot of money. Well, why can't I just do that? Why can't everyone do that? There's certain hurdles. One of those hurdles is getting a loan, qualifying for a loan, coming up with the cash to put on a down payment. Seller financing is a way to get over that hurdle, right? So you can use your little money and get a lot of money out still. And so for me, like I love seller financing. I've done a handful of seller finance deals. I think a couple of things, I'm just going to like ramble really quick. One is it's a numbers game. So you got to ask enough people if they're interested in seller financing. Like there's how many homes on the market right now, right? Every offer you submit, doesn't matter if it's an all cash offer, doesn't matter if it's, a financed offer, but there should be a seller financing option in there, in my opinion, every single offer. And even if the home you're not interested in it or it doesn't pencil, right? Hey, well, will it pencil if they're willing to seller finance it? I don't know. Let me ask. Another thing that I do is I'll search seller financing on Craigslist. I'll search it on KSL. I'll search it on Zillow, right? The MLS, seller financing, owner financing, right? Little things like that.
Which for the record, those are the same thing if anybody's confused. Seller financing, owner financing, different term for the exact same thing.
Same thing. Yeah, same thing. Use them interchangeable. But the reason that I do that stuff is because it's going to pull certain things up and it'll say in the description, like willing to seller finance, willing to owner finance, whatever, right? So that's another little thing there, how to go and find them. And then to just put the offers in and ask people, majority will say, no, I'm not interested. I just want the cash, but majority will, or a handful of them will actually be interested. You'll be surprised. And then the last thing, dude, that I would say is now is the best time to go and do that. The best time to go get seller finance deals is right now. It wasn't 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, like, when people cry and whine and freak out about, what interest rates are doing, I'm like, dude, it's amazing because of that, right? The market's gotten a little bit more stagnant. And when that happens, you're in this middle situation where sellers still think their house is worth so much money. Buyers are like, hey, the market's coming down. It's not worth that much. And not only that, interest rates are so high, like I can't even qualify for that. And sellers are like, yeah, but it just appraised for this. So this is what I want out of it. And then you, as the investor and the smart person, come in and say, cool, let's come up with a happy medium. I'll give you exactly what you're asking for, right? Based on these conditions. Yeah. And that's what's cool too, is like another thing, people get so caught up in the purchase price. The purchase price isn't even like that important, right? Unless you're buying for the equity right off the bat. Like we invest for cash flow majority of the time. Like that's the focus, is the cash flow and the freedom that brings. And so who cares how much you paid for it within reason, as long as you can get your terms. You can negotiate a 50-year term, right? You can negotiate interest-only payments. You can negotiate seller finance deal. I don't give you a payment for 10 years, and then I'll start paying you the mortgage. You know how much cash flow you can get in that time and save that up and get other deals and get, like, you can negotiate whatever you want. It's seller financed. So that's me rambling on it for a second.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and just on the note of like terms, it's like, if you like purchase price not really mattering, if you go find like a cheap crap little townhomes worth 300,000, 200,000, right? That's what they are in Utah, but it's like, I'll give you $1 million for that home if I only have to pay you $5 a month until it's paid off. You know what I mean? Like I'll give you 5 million for that home. I don't care.
Well, dude, it goes back to the whole puzzle piece, right? Someone sees one piece of the puzzle and they're like, $1 million for that. I would never, ever, ever pay that much money. Like you're dumb if you do that ever. And then you're like, wait, let me show you the other pieces, right? Yeah. These are the terms. This is the house, whatever, right? So
Yeah. So, and then, so my thought when I see the term seller financing, people get excited. They think it's cool. They think it's sexy. I'm just like, it's only cool if you get better terms than you can find somewhere else.
Yes.
Like, that's the only time seller financing is cool. And that's what makes it cool is the terms are so flexible. You don't have to qualify. You can negotiate whatever the heck you want, but it's only cool if you're getting better terms. I've literally had students come and be like, hey, I got this seller finance sale. I'm so excited. You know, it's 25% or 30% down. They're doing 7% interest. I'm like, dude, you can get better terms at the bank right now. Like, what are you doing negotiating seller financing that are worse terms than the bank? You know what I mean? It's like, unless you can't
Yeah.
qualify for a bank loan, then it's like, hey, you take what you can get. So anyway, that's just my thought on it. On seller financing, it's cool, but it's only cool if you negotiate something better than you can get somewhere else.
Yeah,
Um,
and if it's like, and if it's only for a year or only for 6 months, it's like you also don't want to get yourself in a bind
yeah,
where you have to go get a loan for it anyways. And so it's like just thinking ahead in the future and making sure you have backup options. And the other thing too is making sure there's no prepayment penalties. Like sometimes you'll get yourself locked into a seller finance deal and you think it's great and the interest rate's locked in, but it's really, really high. Well, and then what happens if rates all of a sudden drop way, way down and you the way it's written is you can't get out of it, right? So it's always nice to set up some sort of something where you can refinance it at any time, or if you did, there's a little bit of a penalty, but nothing that's going to, make it crazy for you. Just little things with that to always like look for an exit as well.
yeah, amen. Well, we're gonna wrap this out. I want to go through our final four though with you since I got you. I always ask these to everybody. So we'll just ask the final four to you before we end
We
out.
ask them to you instead. I think
We'll
I think we
both
should
do
ask
it.
them to
We'll
you.
both do it.
Okay.
So what is a non-real estate related bucket list item you've recently checked off or excited to check off next?
I just did. We just had a mastermind in Las Vegas, and so a lot of this like goal setting and all the things are fresh on my mind. But maybe that, dude. Maybe so. Like I've wanted to host my own mastermind for a long time, and have it like not just real estate related. Like I love real estate. We're always jam on real estate, but I'm passionate about personal development. I'm
Sure.
passionate about entrepreneurship and growing a business and just creating more freedom in life, real estate and other ways. And so I'll put a group together of there's 15 people total in the mastermind, and we meet once a quarter in these like super rad spots. So we have St. Thomas on the list. We have like these bungalows we're staying in on the ocean or right on the beach right there. And so, and yeah, I'm pumped for that. I just got done with our first one, but that's something I've wanted to do for a while now, and finally just like made it happen. So
Love
does
it.
that count?
I love it. Sounds good. Yeah. So one for me, and I don't know if it's going to be next, but hopefully it'll be soon. Is I really want to go free diving with whales. Um, that and I kind of set as a goal, if I hit certain goals this year, then that's like my reward. I found this like retreat where you can go swim with whales, and I'm just like,
Dude,
man,
you don't need a retreat. They're everywhere.
in
We
Maui right now.
Yeah, no, seriously. Come
That's
on
true.
out.
I'll just come
Like,
out
no,
there, paddle out, and just do
I'll
it.
send you some videos. So we've been lately doing either like kayaks or paddleboarding at least once a week. But they're just right off the shore. They're everywhere right now because
Have
it's
you
whale
actually like
season.
jumped in and snorkeled and like got in the water with them?
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, and
So
you can hear them. They're super loud too. So you can always tell when there's one under you, and it's just so loud above the water. And then you go underwater and it's insane.
okay.
But did you see that video
I
where the
remember the
tail
video of you guys
connects
like
off the
last year
shoulder?
when you first moved there. It was crazy. It was so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
So I'm probably not as brave as you where I'm gonna like dive
Oh,
down and just
I
like
wanted
hang out
like
with them.
15 feet under, just like hanging on his fin. But dude, that's one that's definitely on the
That's
books.
cool.
All right, next question. What book are you currently reading?
So I just finished I just finished the 12-week year for the second time. I thought that
Oh,
was really
nice.
good. Yeah, so and I just like I said, just finished that one. I have a few books I'm reading right now. Well, I usually try and read one physical book and one on Audible at least.
Mm-hmm.
But .com Secrets is one of those. It's Russell Brunson. I've been like super interested in marketing the last probably couple of years and like the psychology of marketing because I feel like as a society, we're all kind of like shifted to everything's being thrown at us, right? Online, socially, digitally, all these
Yeah.
things. And so I think the psychology of marketing has just been super fascinating to me, and how people think and buy and all those things.
I love it. Yeah, I'm usually reading a couple books at the same time as well. I just finished Crushing It by Brian Murray in
Mm.
commercial and real estate or whatever.
Yeah.
Super good book. Well written. It's an entertaining read. The one I'm currently reading is Surrender. I'm listening to on Audible. It's Bono from U2. It's his like biography that he just came out with.
Oh,
And I love these ones where these like celebrities like they're not just books now. It's almost like a presentation masterpiece, like Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, Will Smith's book Will, and then this one's like
yeah.
they're reading it and they're like obviously entertainers, so they're good at presenting it. But then there's like
Yeah.
music and dialogue and like there's like all this like it makes it super interesting. So that's what I'm listening to right now. But
That's sweet, man. Love it.
all right, last two questions. So, what content, book, podcast, course, YouTube channel, whatever, podcast, anything would you recommend besides real estate investing school stuff?
Dude, I need like a topic. That's the thing. I thrive off this stuff. It's like so fun for me.
What podcast?
So
What's the most recent podcast you listened to? Who's recent one?
Ben Bergeron, Chasing Excellence.
There we go.
Yeah, it's a good. He's coached like most of the CrossFit Games champions, so it's just interesting his take on a lot of things.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in God, so I don't align with him there. But unlike a lot of the other, probably everything else, like I align with him on a lot of it. It's good stuff.
Yeah, that's dope. That's cool. One I've been listening to recently is Huberman Lab, which again is like a health and fitness, but he's like this scientist about it all, and it's like his stuff's legit.
Did you know that he's a founder of like Plunge, the cold tubs?
Oh, is he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
I saw
funny.
it the other day. Yeah.
That's funny because it was actually listening to his stuff that like made cold plunges not as sexy anymore, because he had this whole thing about like how it actually hurts hypertrophy when you're trying to like gain muscle. So you don't want to do it after workouts. You want to do it like
Interesting.
4 hours later or before. Like it actually it hurts muscle growth, because you want the inflammation to help like pain the muscle to grow. So I actually started doing less cold dip after listening to that. But
I don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure it was him. Maybe I'm thinking of another person, but
who knows?
Yeah,
but good stuff.
He's one of the fitness experts out there. He's got good stuff.
Dude, talking about cold dips, I just did this triathlon. I started this thing called Dope Challenges, where I just like want to go do like random physical challenges.
I saw that.
And so I just did my first one. It was a triathlon. So we just went out and we did a mountain bike, we went running, and then we did a swim. And it was a half-mile swim, but it was here in southern Utah at this little lake called Fire Lake. But the water is 38 degrees.
Oh.
And even with a wetsuit, 20 minutes to do a half-mile swim in 38-degree water, it just like it messed with your brain. You can't even swim normal with like all the wetsuit stuff on. You're trying to stay warm, so your strokes are slow, and you don't want to put your face in the water, so you've got all this drag on your chest, and it messed with my mind, dude. I almost blacked out while swimming because I was hyperventilating from the cold, and I couldn't get good breaths the entire swim. That was gnarly. So that was quite the cold plunge.
That sounds intense.
Yes, it was gnarly, man. It was fun though, but I survived. Every lap, it was 5 laps of the lake back and forth to hit a half a mile. And every lap, I'm like, I'm just going to go this lap and then I'm done. Like, I'm done after this lap. And I just kept going until I did all 5, but it was nuts.
That's so cool.
All right, last question. What would be your text message to the world? You send out a text and it blows up and everybody gets a message from Brody Fawcett. What's it going to say?
I'm just going to give you something that's, where's my phone? I wrote this down the other day. You know me, dude. If I dwell on this too long, I like overthink this stuff and I'm like, oh, this is my one shot, like my only opportunity.
Right.
So I'm not going to overthink it. And I'm just going to say what's on my mind. Let's see. I'm going to read it to you.
Okay. Well, you look for that. I'll just throw mine.
Oh, I found it.
All right,
you go first.
Okay.
You can go.
So the only thing that came to my mind, like I said, I don't know if this is the perfect one. I didn't spend hours thinking about it. I didn't even know I was going to be answering these. So the only thing I thought of is this. I just say something like, be happy and healthy everything else is just like a side note. Like everything else is just leverage. It's just a tool. It's just to help you be happy and healthy. If you're not happy and healthy, like nothing else matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's my
good.
thought.
Yeah, you live and preach that, so that's rad. Okay, so this is something that resonated with me recently. We have to define ourselves by who we are most of the time. So I just like that because it's like it's so easy like to get in this. We put ourselves on a pedestal a lot of times, and how we think we want to be. We're like, yeah, I'm that person, or yeah, I'm the healthy person. Yeah, I value health and happiness, like you said, but are you really? Like, what do you do most of the time? And if we looked at the end of the day, we look back at your whole day, what did you do most of the time? Because that's who you are. And it's kind of like a wake up call. And I think that's why it resonated with me. I'm like, man, it's a wake up call to pay attention to what I'm doing most of the time, because that's what actually matters. And that's how you get defined, not what you think is cool, not what you want to be doing, not what you say you prioritize, but you actually don't.
Yeah, I think of that all the time when I hear like entrepreneurs or business people talking about like family. And it's like, dude, when was the last time you even had a weekend with your family, dude?
Yes.
Like, oh, it's all about being a dad. And it's like, have you ever even been home with your kids?
Yeah.
Like, and obviously a lot of people do prioritize it, but a lot of them don't. But it seems like something to say, or they think that's important. But what are they really doing most of the time? I like that too. I
100%.
also think it goes like, for the people who maybe can be too hard on themselves, like they do something dumb, they make a mistake, they get in an argument or whatever,
Mm.
and it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, I'm like this. It's like, not most of the time. That was just one stupid thing you did. Chill. Like,
Yeah.
what do you like most of the time? I like that.
That's a good spin on it. I didn't think about that.
Can go both ways, whether you're over thinking you're too good or thinking you're too bad. It's like,
Yeah.
no, step back.
So like I said, just got back from this first mastermind meetup, and I thought I would come back with like these big business goals and like just big things in life and da 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 da, and like set some awesome goals in that regard. But my number one takeaway is like, bro, I just need to be where my feet are. I need to be
Mm.
more present. I have so many things in my life. I've been so blessed. Like I just need to focus on being a better dad, focus on being a better husband, like the little things. And it's just crazy, like how much motivation and like drive to go do those simple things more so than like building some empire. And I think that the story really resonates, and a couple of different people brought it up, but I'm not sure if you heard the story of the fisherman.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
It's on like
love
Jimmy
this
John's
analogy.
wall a lot of times, but
No, Sharon, I think about this a lot.
yeah, you could probably say it better than I can, the story. But just to kind of like summarize it, there's this guy. He's in third world country fishing on the beach, right? And he's doing it. He gets his fish and is able to feed his family at home, and has a couple kids, whatever. Well, this guy that's vacationing there, he sees him fishing, and he's like, hey, you should like cast two poles out at a time. You can catch twice as many fish. And he's like, well, what would I do then? He's like, well, then you'll have more money and you can hire somebody to help you fish. And he's like, well, then what? Well, then you'll be bringing in more fish, so you'll have more money. So then you can go buy, some fishing boats, and then you can get a fleet of boats. And he's like, well, then what? Well, then you'll be making so much money that you can ultimately retire on a beach and, fish every day for fun. And he's like, okay, so exactly what I'm doing right now. All right. So it just stood out differently to me this time, because it's like, yeah, like you're grinding so hard to what? Like to
Yeah.
have more time with your kids. Okay. Well, what if you have time now so it's just a good reminder for me is all.
No, I love that. It's like, yeah, it really kind of puts in perspective. It's like, what's the ultimate goal here? Especially just, we both have young kids. So on that note, I just think like the young kids won't, the fishing will be there in 10, 15 years from now, but the young kids won't be, because they'll be adults, right? And so it's
Yeah.
like you can't go wait until the future to hang out with your kids.
Dude, so
It's
good.
like, and they're probably going to be off chasing down their dreams in 10 or 15 years. So it's like, maybe
So
fish with
good.
them now and get rich tomorrow if it's going
Yeah.
to take too much. And I'll just kind of end also on one note where, they say like money can't buy happiness. And so I have this follow up to that. It's like, yeah, money can't buy happiness. So don't don't trade your happiness for it, but do be willing to trade your laziness for it. Do be willing to trade your fear for it. Do be able to trade your weaknesses for it. There's a lot you should trade for money because you can leverage money to do a lot of stuff. And one thing that, that fisherman probably doesn't have healthcare if his kid broke his arm. So like, maybe get a few extra fish you can sell, but don't trade your happiness for it. But do trade your weaknesses, your fears, and your laziness for it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Are you fishing every day for you, or are you fishing every day for, for somebody else or for other reasons? And dude, that's such a good thing to jam on. I love that insight, dude.
Well, this is fun, man. I think we'll start doing these like at least like every month or so. Just like kind of an open Q&A. I think this was fun. Hopefully people liked it. Feel free to reach out to us, message us, let us know your thoughts on it, and let us know questions for next time.
Sweet, brother. Thanks, man.
Well, without any further ado, this is Joe Jensen signing off on the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to be happy and be healthy.